the Bolsheviks sided with the Spanish government. And meanwhile, Hitler was backing Franco. And so what you had essentially was the anarchists just having to make a go of it with their own stick to itiveness and their own productive capacities, whereas their enemies were being bankrolled by foreign entities, right?
Wait, that's amazing. Before we continue on that, I just had a question. Well, I wanted to tell the people who are hearing this, like, people need to understand, because there's such a huge dismissal of there being hope for the future as far as change goes. Because people say, oh, whenever you add a certain number of people, beyond, I don't know, a couple thousand or whatever, people just become chaotically and are, hierarchical and competitive, and all that shit just comes out of them. Like, you know how they always say that kind of stuff, like, oh, China's a huge country, that's why it's competitive and all this stuff. And numbers, once there's a certain number of people, it becomes unmanageable, and you just it breaks into, it's a completely absurd argument, but that's what they say. And it's like, no, here we are talking about 2 million people who lived very much counter to the cultural and economic normalities of capitalist culture, which is, commodification, strict hierarchy, mass advertisement, artificial demand, creating all kinds of neuroses in people, all the wealth inequality and competing for jobs and growth and, labor for income and all these things that we take for granted, like just normality of life, like seems to be nothing beyond that. But that's how people were organizing back then. And like you said, it's such a counter to the way normally are done in business as usual in the world, that it was like the one thing they could unify against, right, the fascists, the communists, and the capitalist was this, right?